who are, because we have that space and we have that opportunity. Okay, yallah, bismillah. So your question.
How is that not gloomy?
Huh?
How is that not gloomy?
Not what?
Not gloomy.
It's not gloomy because Allah says in the Quran, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَالنَّقْصِ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. We will surely test you with something, بِشَيْءٍ, indefinite, of hunger, of fear and hunger and loss of lives and cattle and food. Give glad tidings to those who patiently persevere. It's not gloomy because the overwhelming majority of people aren't in that situation. I said initially, I'm not trying to belittle or dismiss those who are. What I'm trying to say is that if we think it's just so gloomy out there, despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of Muslims aren't confronting those situations, we can become so depressed and or think it's so desperate that we have to take desperate measures. And we squander the opportunity to systematically put ourselves in a position to do something meaningful to assist those who are under those conditions.
I mean, but that's precisely like why things are so gloomy, because that type of solution is just
that's not a
realistic.
solution.
I mean, the suffering out there is the only suffering that counts is not violent suffering. I mean, we have human trafficking. We have people that are treated like slaves in that Emirates.
We have people treated like slaves here. These are that's the human condition. So what I'm saying,
that's not a reason to think that things aren't gloomy. I mean,
I didn't say. I said
like
not everyone are in those gloomy conditions. You're not in those conditions. You don't go to bed at night with fear of someone kicking your door down.
That's true.
And driving your women folk out into the yard in their night clothes while they ransack your house. No one in this room goes to bed thinking about maybe a bomb's gonna fall on my house tonight. So I'm not saying there are not people who are under those conditions. I'm not saying that's not bad. I'm not saying we're not obliged to do something, but sometimes when we get in a mentality that it's so bad, it leads to desperate action. We have people leaving places like Princeton to go join ISIS because it's so bad over there. I need to do something. And that something couldn't be applying my mind to develop or position myself politically to affect the political process here in ways that would prevent some of those atrocities and some of that negativity. So but everyone hates us. How are we going to do that? Everyone hated the Jews. That's my mother-in-law, kind of jokes they used to make about Jews in this society.
6 million of them were killed.
And how Jews were so afraid here, they changed their name from Goldberg to Gold and Silverstein to Silver. And now look where they are now. Because they position themselves by systematically taking advantage of the opportunities. The same thing for homosexuals. Like 40, 30 years ago, a homosexual in many places was what? In the closet, wouldn't even publicly announce they were homosexual. Where are they now? They're determining, they're having major debates with one of the 2 major political parties about what their stance is going to be on an issue favorable to them after people hated them, belittled them. So as Muslims, we could say, I'm not denying, I did it. I spent a good part of my life doing it. We shouldn't be riled up and protesting, but at what point do we step back, take a dispassionate look at the situation, and then begin to systematically strengthen ourselves so that we can make a real difference in these issues? That's all I'm saying. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be concerned. Man asbah wa lam yahtamna bi umur al-muslimin falaysa bi muslim. One who wakes up in the morning and isn't concerned about the condition of the Muslim isn't a Muslim. I'm not saying none of that. I'm saying it's not so bad that Muslims here or Muslims in Canada, this is it, MSA. I'm not in Palestine saying this. I'm not in these areas that we mentioned saying this, Somalia, India, Kashmir, here or there. I'm in the United States. And I think this is one of the challenges of leadership, is beginning to systematically develop a program to empower ourselves so that we can do something meaningful to affect the direction of this world. Otherwise, I don't want to, when I was a student, the same approaches, the same issues, the same methodology for dealing with it, we were engaged in. I'm talking over 30 years ago. And now we're in worse condition. So at what point, and things, you think things are gloomy now. Things are really gloomy. We had genocide in Bosnia. We had the beginning of the Somali crisis, which was far more violent than it is now. We had the 30-year, we had just recently completed, or it was the horrific bombing of Beirut by the IDF. We had all this going on. It's far worse than it is now. And so you think, we didn't think it was gloomy, and we're gonna take desperate measures, but doing all that didn't change anything. So I don't wanna see your generation 30 years from now being in the same position we're in, my generation is in today. And so I'm just saying we have to begin to look at this situation from a different lens.
And
That's all.
Imam Zaid, the solution is, to this question, what is the solution?
The solution is to take advantage of the opportunities that we have to become influencers in our society. That's the solution. And this group right here has
That
more opportunities to do that than probably any other group of Muslims in this country. And so that, I think that should be a key part. And influences doesn't mean everyone going into electoral politics, but it does mean having a vision wide enough to realize that collectively, if we begin to systematically position ourselves. I'll give you an example that it could be relevant or not to what. What's your name, sir? Rami. Right now, if we had a mobilization against what's happening in Palestine, while the world's attention is focused elsewhere, ongoing targeted assassinations, we recently witnessed land usurpation, the continual encroachment against Al-Aqsa, etc. We're mobilizing. And some of our students in our MSA aren't participating. They're very prominent, very talented, very vocal. What would we generally say about those students who didn't participate? And not just those who don't come to MSA, I mean, those who are actively involved in campus activities. What would we say about them? Nothing?
Shame.
Huh?
Shame.
Shame. You say shame on them. They're sellouts. They've been hanging out with the Hillel students, getting their brains washed. All right? At what point do we start to say, you know what? This student, this student, this student, they're very intelligent, they're very charismatic, they're very influential. We're not going to let them go to these demonstrations because we're going to groom them for a career in electoral politics. And if they become associated with this hardcore anti-Zionist activism, they're never going anywhere in the electoral system. And so, far from calling them sellouts or shame on them or cowards, we're going to protect them consciously because we want to maximize their potential to become influential in this society and not to end up like Zahra Biru of CARE San Francisco. What happened to Zahra?
Got tossed off the women's
See, why?
for anti-Zionist comments.
For anti-Zionist comments and activism. So does that mean, oh, everyone, no one, we don't have, no, some people we know, that's their thing, they're hardcore, they don't want to run for office, they don't even believe in the viability of the system. So that's their thing. But these students, we're going to protect them as part of a conscious strategy. And so that's just an example of the beginning of a solution, to answer my mother-in-law's question. But, wallah, let the students have their questions. You get your questions at home every day. That's not fair. Time is limited, and you want to have all the questions. So let's just hold on.
Who's we wanted
Or
you to give a
comments,
chance
or
to
comments, or comments.
Did you have a question for the fireside chat? You can even ask just one of them. It's good.
Yeah, I'll start. I guess I'll ask one question just to start off. First of all, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. I think this was a great opportunity to really reflect and to apply some of the things that we were learning in some of the workshops that we had today. In fact, one of the workshops was about having difficult conversations and how these types of forums can create difficult and feelings of discomfort in people, but how necessary it is.
That's why we have to have love for each other. I never met Rami. I love you, brother. And
We've met a couple of times actually.
I appreciate your passion, and I understand. No, we have to be able to disagree, but listen, you guys write this down because it rhymes. We have to be able to disagree and afterwards still go out and have a cup of tea. Why? Because there's love between us. We're not enemies, we're all on the same team. We're families. Like you sometimes your brothers and your siblings, you're like bam, bam, bam. And then you're like, okay, mashallah, let's go eat breakfast. So, the love has to be there. Then the conversations then becomes easier because we know, listen, people are not gonna agree with me, but it's not the end of the world. I'm not gonna agree with everyone. It's not the end of the world. We're still on the same team and we're trying to figure it out so the team can go forward. So what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I was just saying thank you again for the presentation. And one of the questions that I was having is, as youth, especially as college students, I think this is a time where we have a lot of ideas, like you said. We have a lot of passions and we want to get involved and see what we can do to change the things that are going on. But at the same time, this is also a time where we need to learn and we need to gain knowledge and seek knowledge. And there's a lot of noise that comes with that seeking knowledge because it's hard to tell what's right and what's wrong and who's right and who's wrong nowadays. So I think my question is, how do we balance the time that it's going to take to actually gain the knowledge and the expertise and what we want to accomplish and what we want to address, with also having that urgency to do something now because things are happening and we feel like we should be a part of that. You know, how do you
I think that the verse answers it in part. Lamma sabaru. They became leaders after they patiently persevered. So the patience required to maximize your opportunities to learn. In order to be in a better position in the future to effectively do something, I think can help answer that question. So, and it's situational. Some situations can be so bad that we like, listen, I know I have an exam tomorrow, but this is unacceptable. I have to go out there and have to be counted. And so it's not a question of in every situation, but as a general rule, I think we have to have priorities. Like life involves prioritizing. And what they say, as Sufi ibn al-Waqt. And Sufi in the meaning where as a very refined, spiritually conscious, but totally committed to Sharia Muslim. That's the Sufi, is a child of the moment. In other words, he or she tries to understand what does Allah want from me and what is the most appropriate thing for me to be doing in this moment I find myself in. So as Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah said, wisdom and hikmatu fi'lu alladhi yanbaghi, doing the most appropriate thing, fil waqt alladhi yanbaghi, at the most appropriate time, bil uslub alladhi yanbaghi, with the most appropriate method. And that's wisdom. And so what is the most appropriate thing for me to be doing in this time I find myself in, and what is the most effective method? And so I think if we can begin to have that sort of, or similar calculus to weigh our actions, and we can begin to get insight into that question. Allah knows best. Any other questions or comments? Oh, yes, sir.
So increasingly, I think, as we're talking about Muslims moving into more public positions in this country and elsewhere, there's a question of whether it's okay enough to be just a Muslim in that space, or someone who's using Islamic principles to guide their actions and reach a solution that a non-Muslim might not reach. And so along with that, there's like a big quest to find whatever Islam says about a specific thing. And as a community, how do we deal with disagreement and multiplicity, because Islam doesn't say just one thing on so many of the issues that are important. And for example, like maybe, I don't really want to get into this example, but Islam says many things about abortion that are acceptable within our religious paradigm.
Oh, okay.
But we're asked to like one.
That's an excellent example. That's an excellent question and example. Number one, like, what is the mu'tamad? Like, there are all kinds of opinions, legal discussions. What is the abortion stance of virtually every Muslim country? Life begins at conception, and abortion at any stage or time is forbidden. And that's the opinion, the mu'tamad, the reliable fatwa of every significant madhab. And so I think we can get lost in the opinions. And I think, but we have to see what is the opinion that has been operationalized, and are we displaying wisdom and integrity to our tradition when we go away from that operationalized opinion to search for these opinions that exist in this very rich tradition of discussion that suits a passing contingency. Right now, the passing contingency for the Muslims who are searching for the ideal abortion fatwa is what fatwa will bring the Muslim community into harmony with the liberal wing of the Democratic Party. That's what we're looking for. Why? Because 5 years ago, Muslims weren't even talking about abortion. It's only when it became an issue du jour for the Democratic Party, now we're scrambling for a fatwa that is compatible with the position they've arrived at. That's not integrity. And that's not being faithful to a tradition. That's political expediency. And then what happens when the Democratic Party decides, well, we really don't need Muslims after all, because now Trump is winning Muslims over. Let's say hypothetically. And so kind of Muslims are the anti-Trump. Trump is going to make a Muslim ban. I'm going to find me a woman in hijab to sit next to me at the State of the Union address. Now that moment passes. Now we've rolled roughshod over our tradition. The reason we did it has passed. Where does that leave us as a community? And so I think in looking at a lot of these issues, we have to see what al-isnad min ad-din. فلولا الإسناد لقال من شاء ما شاء. That authenticated chains of transmission. So what has been transmitted for us, to us, generation after generation, are an integral part of this religion. Were not for those authenticated chains of transmission, anyone could have said anything and then passed it off as Islam. So I think we have to really be honest with ourselves and act on principle and not expediency. Now, again, there might be exceptional circumstances where expediency has to be followed. But if in every situation, in every circumstance we do that, we're just making a mockery of our religion. Allahu a'lam wal musta'an.
How about for issues where there isn't as clear of a consensus, where like the different madhahib say different things, but because there's such a pressure to have like the one answer that Islam says or our community should follow, people are keen to like toss out
Yeah.
those who hold other perfectly acceptable opinions. How do we kind of create a community of Muslims where we're okay with differences that are within the tradition?
I think that's part of our strategic thinking. We have to begin to strategize in a way that unifies us at a certain level. There's certain levels diversity is welcome. But at a certain level, especially at how we engage with our society in a productive way, there has to be a level of unity. And that unity has to be coupled with a strategic vision. And so our strategic vision that's cobbled out by our coming together and arrived at a consensus determines which of these viable opinions we're going to advance. And so what happens now? We throw them out and then we debate them in the blogosphere without never having sat down to try to develop a strategy to even determine which of these should we give priority to. And so again, I think one of the challenges of your generation is to stop that way of acting. And like, listen, we need to begin to sit down and develop strategies. And then the decisions we make in terms of what opinions out of valid and legitimate contending opinions we're going to advance. Yes, sir.
How would you deal with, like, for example, some people feel uncomfortable moving up positions in a certain company or taking government office because they feel like what the government or the company is doing. You have several haram actions that they don't feel comfortable with. Do you think in that case it's good to move up in the positions, or is it good to like stay at a lower level and like out of?
Well, let Ibn Taymiyyah answer that question. Ibn Taymiyyah was asked about a Muslim in a minority situation who has an opportunity to move up. Should he or she do it? He said if they have, in the context of that opportunity, the ability to gain some tangible benefit for the Muslim community, is wajib, it's obligatory for them to move up. And if there's no benefit to be gained by that, then they should not do it. And so the maslaha, or the clearly defined benefit or interest that can be advanced, if there's an ability to advance it, is wajib for that person. That's their jihad. Dealing with the peripheral hassles and hassles and hardships that might be involved in moving up, if they can gain some tangible benefit for the community. It's wajib.
But how would you differentiate between like your nafs and your desire to like get a higher salary or to have a better name for yourself and truly helping out the Muslim community?
In that case, you shouldn't put yourself in a situation to even question it. Like if in moving up, there's a clearly identified benefit I can gain for the community, and I'm also going to make more money, mashallah. And what's happening? Well, marhaban. And how do you keep your nafs in check? Give most of it away in charity. Yes.
sorry to bounce off this question. So you say like the solution for the problems of the Muslim Ummah is to groom the current population so that we can present Islam at higher level.
No, wait, no, not the whole Muslim population. I said some people. I said these 3 or 4 talented people we're going to groom. These people are going to do something else. I think that's another strategic flaw. We haven't developed a viable division of labor, which comes directly from a lack of a strategy. If we strategize, we say, no, these people are extremely charismatic, likable, very intelligent. We're going to groom them for political office. Now, would that bring the kind of benefits that we desire? We don't know, because this is a multi-decade project. These people know how to make money. You know, they did a startup while they were still students at Princeton, and they sold that startup for $50 million. Now they're working on a second one, and they had an offer of $100 million from Google, but they refused because they know if they refine it and wait another 18 months, they can get $500 million from Apple. Yeah, so what do we do? We're like saying, no, we want these guys to go into politics. We said, no, keep working on your startup, and we're going to bring in some people you can consult to make sure you get that $500 million IPO. And so not everyone is electoral politics. Some people who have shown an extreme potential in that area, those people are for that. These people have shown they have the ability to understand how to make money in this society, halal money. That's what we're going to encourage them and try to strengthen them and assist them in doing. So we're going to try to develop our own Sequoia, so we can fund them. And then the money's coming back to us. And then they're going to get their benefit from when they sell, and we're going to get paid back. So that's their thing. Other people, we're encouraging them. This person can write. I mean, they're the top writer on the Rutgers. Do they still have the Daily Targum? What is the name for a newspaper? At Rutgers. Any Rutgers student? No more. Do they still have that?
I don't think so. Or if they do, it's not called that. I just started.
Yeah. So in other words, you would have heard about it. That's what the paper, the Daily Targum. What is a Targum? That's like a Buckeye. Anyone from Ohio State? I'm sorry. What's a Buckeye? What's a nut?
Yeah, from a tree, yeah.
What's a Hoosier? It's something a Buckeye eats for dinner. Okay. But so these people can write. So after they finish their undergrad, we're going to provide them scholarships to the Columbia School of Journalism so they can hone their skills. And when they graduate, we have a newspaper waiting for them. We have a magazine waiting for them that was developed by these IT people. It's an online magazine like Breitbart. And so we're developing our own Breitbart. And so I'm not saying everyone, these people electoral politics, these people making money, these people writing and influencing, these people just being good family people who are raising stable families and children who are going to inherit it all, because we could do all that and then all our kids there's no Muslims left because they're all off into whatever, and there's no one even inherit it all. I gotta let my mother-in-law ask her question. I won't get dinner tomorrow.
Imam Zaid,
What's your question?
You want me to ask a question?
You had a question before.
Well, it may take you off the subject you're on, but I'll ask it. In Arabia, there is 2 sects of people
Who are those 2
that
sects
are
of people?
called MOSLIM, most Muslim and Muslim. What is the difference? Muslim
Your pronunciation.
and Muslim.
That's a question you should have asked like 20 years ago.
Well, we didn't have a conference like this.
Okay,
You weren't supposed to
okay.
be to ask.
Okay,
So,
okay, here we go.
I'm asking it now. What
Here
are
we
the
go.
difference in their
First, we need
faith?
a drum roll.
They have the same faith?
There is absolutely no difference other than your pronunciation.
Well, why do they have the difference?
They don't have the difference. English speakers have the difference. Those Muslims, those Muslims,
It's
those
not written
Muslims.
anywhere, the Muslim,
The-
MOS?
Do we have any, I mean, it's
Behind you.
M-U-S, like we have native thing, M-U-S.
I mean, I thought there was
I
two
don't know
different
about
groups.
I know about
know.
me. About the road in Islam. No, I'm gonna show you. Here it is, here it is.
Oh, yeah.
There's only one Muslim, and Arabic is this.
That's it. Okay.
Muslim. Now, to the
Muslim.
uninitiated English speaker out there, this becomes this,
Oh, I see. So it-
and this becomes this,
I see. Is that what you mean?
and this becomes this. And this becomes this. And this becomes this.
Oh, you're exaggerating.
Jama, am I exaggerating?
Explain the difference.
We have Muslim and Muslim and Muslim and Muslim and...
Let's not make fun of this.
I'm not making fun.
Is
Wait,
there-
hold up, mother-in-law.
I'm asking.
No, let me ask you. But do you
Living
think
in
these,
Arabia.
all of these fine young people, would you think they would try to deceive you?
I'm
Look at these
asking
people.
you, not.
I'm asking, I need to get a witness.
Not. They don't,
All right, so now,
they want
the
to
people
know-
who would never deceive my mother-in-law, is this an exaggeration in terms of pronunciation?
No, you tell me, darling, what would you say to this question?
That I agree with his answer.
Okay.
Why? I would never try to pull the wool over the sheep's eyes.
I know.
All right, Suhaib, yellow.
Okay.
Imam Zaid, there's, mashallah, people who came from very far away, and so we want to let them return to their homes safely tonight, inshallah.
Yeah.
And so I think what we'll do is we'll just, if anyone has a question that they really want to get out there, we'll just take a few at a time and just you give a final wrap-up answer to that, and then inshallah we can. So these two sisters over here, these two brothers over here, so we'll have the 4 questions together, and then you can kind of give a wrap-up answer, inshallah.
Okay, I just want to finish my question to start with. So, by leadership, I meant leadership in all fields. So how effective of a solution do you think it is, considering it's very easy to get corrupted while you're trying to get to rise in the ranks, and the people who are already leading those positions are predominantly atheists or agnostic people who don't, how easy is it for Muslims to bring their ideas to the table so that they can change the situation for the ummah?
It's not easy at all. That's why it's called a jihad. It's not easy. Now, when you say something's a jihad, and speaking figuratively, it's called a jihad because it's hard. Like, you're out there on the frontiers, you're in the mountains, you're freezing, you barely have any food to eat. There's monotony of just waiting for this random encounter with this enemy that's out there. And you're out there for months on end. That is difficult. And so, going into these arenas, trying to affect change in a system that's deeply entrenched within its institutional foundations is not easy. I'm not trying to suggest it's easy, but we can only try. And this is why I mentioned the spiritual, the spiritual foundation has to be there to understand. If the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is told, "Laysa laka min al-amri shay' aw yatuba alayhim aw yu'adhibuhum fa innahu ghafur," you have nothing to do with the outcome. You just try. وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَكِيمِ. But actual victory only comes from Allah, the mighty, the wise. So our responsibility is to try our hardest despite the obstacles, challenges, and difficulties. The outcome is with Allah.
So my question is about, so I guess I'll contextualize. So we live in like a non-Muslim country. So we don't necessarily have a lot of like laws in place that might follow like the Islamic way of life. And sometimes, at least personally, like I feel like I've had to make certain sacrifices. For example, I can give two examples. So one is like studying on loan. So there's a lot of interest. I'm going to be graduating with like $300,000 in debt. Another example would be, say I want like a bigger house for my family. Like I don't have that money right now, but you know I'm going to get a mortgage, I'm going to get a loan. But obviously there's interest on top of that. Another like more low-key example is like, oh, the only networking event in my company like takes place at a bar, like should I go or not? So I feel like all these things require a little bit of like sacrifice, and how do you suggest we like navigate that?
I think the first thing is to understand that religion, the essence of religion, is one of the foundational principles of religion is sacrifice, of hate. It is sacrifice. And so we have to begin to approach our situations with a willingness to sacrifice. Like, I don't know what you're studying or where you're studying, but I would say that $300,000 in debt to that, whatever that degree is, there has to be another way to attain it, even if it takes an additional 10 years to do so. And the house, a lot of our desires for bigger. You drive by like old neighborhoods, you see these little bitty houses. These houses were built, like you go to Long Island, to the Levitt houses, you go to Levittown, and see these, or California, you go to the old parts of Berkeley or Oakland, and you see these little bitty 700, 800, 900 square feet houses. Those houses were when people were having 5 and 6 kids. And so this whole idea of bigger, you know, I have 2 kids now, we have to get a 4,000 square foot house. Why? We have a 3rd kid, we have to buy an SUV. Like, why? We used to squeeze into a Fiat, 7 people. Seriously, one sitting on the stick shift. Like, where do these ideas, this crass materialism comes from? We have to begin to challenge the things that we deem to be necessary, and because they're necessary, they justify these kind of situations we're putting ourselves in. Like, why can't I live in a 700 square foot house? And we'll have a more cozy relationship. So every time I turn around, I'm bumping into you. He's over there and she's over there. They don't see each other throughout the week. Like, subhanAllah, fancy meeting you in the kitchen. In them 700 square feet. I love going down up in there. So we have to begin to question the assumptions that lead us to enter into those situations. Why does it have to be? Why do I have to go into $300,000 debt? You know, it's nothing that I want. You know why? Why is it becoming such an imperative? Because after Wall Street sucked all the money out of home mortgages in 2000, in the early 2000s, culminating in the crash 2008 and 9, student debt became the leading source of liquidity on Wall Street. And that's why it's becoming such an imperative. Because they benefit from it, not you.
But wouldn't that be like a barrier to what some of the things we want to accomplish, like going to med school or law school, you know, and to become those leaders in the communities?
I think-
Do we sometimes have to sacrifice
I
and take
think
that path?
So big a sacrifice.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying, I know people, I know a family, they have a doctor, they have a social worker, they're a PhD in social sciences is in the making. And in terms of the husbands, they have another couple doctors, dentists. There's no debt. Because the dentist, his mother, who was ailing, came out of retirement and worked the whole duration of his med school and put every penny towards his school expenses. The in-laws of the one of them, the in-laws paid for their son-in-law's med school. Said, pay us back whenever, once you get on your feet. And so I think at a family level, at a communal level, and at a national level, we have to begin to develop funding mechanisms so that people who deserve, and this is happening, it's still out of rule, but you have the Islamic Scholarship Fund now. We have several at Zaytuna. Our commitment is that none of our students we haven't had a single student that's graduated with a penny of debt. The last school in the wider academic community was Cooper Union in Lower Manhattan. Then Cooper Union started charging. But we made that commitment. So we have to, as a community, begin to make those kind of commitments. In the meantime, what do you do while we're getting up there? You take the fatwa from your heart. So I'm not gonna say you did wrong. Al-bir husnul khuluq. Righteousness is good character. وَالْإِثْمُ مَا حَاكَ فِي النَّفْسِ وَكَرِهْتُ أَنْ يَطَّلَعَ عَلَيْهِ النَّاسِ. And sin is what causes agitation in your heart, and you wouldn't want people to know about it. So if you're comfortable with that, then that's your fatwa. And in the meantime, having gone through that experience and having experienced the internal trauma and struggle and tension, for sure tension, better word than trauma, the internal tension, now I think you, once it's all is said and done, and 25 years from now, if you paid off that $300,000, I think you would be motivated to begin working on some sort of fund that would ensure those coming after you don't have to be in that situation. So may Allah give you and everyone in that situation tawfiq and make it easy.
Can the two of you ask your questions?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I'll start. So I'll make it quick. It's about leadership and being in the spotlight. So many times, like when you're in a big leadership position, like everyone's looking at you and say like good things about you, and over time, like this gets with you and you like this feeling. So how do you like navigate this fitna of like being the spotlight and like everyone's like looking at you?
I think very quickly, I think it's best. Okay, then yeah, so go ahead and ask. Wait, if it's the exact same question, why are you asking? You just want to be in the spotlight.
And that is kind of goes through the paradoxes of the question itself, right? But I saw Imam Zaid pushing that he wanted us to do it together. So, I mean, when do you think, in an age where there is a call for leaders to emerge, you know, when do you think the MSA should begin having conferences on the unexceptional life? Because there does seem to be, you know, in a lot of aspects in the tradition, the emphasis on the unexceptionality, or which is a different topic, but the emphasis on, you know, being away from positions of leadership, or kind of being away from the wealthy, the rich.
But I already answered that question. I said, and then there are the people who are just going to raise good families. Didn't I say that?
Yes.
Yeah. So everyone doesn't have to be in the spotlight, but if you are, and you find yourself in that situation, that's why spiritual training is very important. No one should go into a public, that's why you see a lot of people get involved in things that end up becoming very scandalous and difficult in the community. They go into these spaces without a strong foundation in terms of their spiritual training. And one of the objects of spiritual training is consistently, and again, it's against the zeitgeist of our society. Our society says it's all about you, like you do you. You do you. It's all about doing your thing, distinguishing, but tradition has been the eradication of the ego and the effacement of the ego. And ultimately just pursuing the love of God and doing things to please God and serve humanity. يعني كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس. You're the best community raised up to serve humanity. يعني خير الناس للناس. The best of people for people. وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. I've only created the jinn and humans to be consistent in the translation to serve me. Ibadah is service. And so that's our reason for existing. And when we find ourselves serving our nafs, it's time to step back and work on the nafs and then re-engage. But if we find that extremely difficult, then we need to understand nothing we do is from us. It's all from Allah. He has created you and what you do. So we have immediate causation, but ultimately, if I have a string of dominoes, and I knock over the first domino, and then the 15th domino knocks over the 16th, what is the immediate cause of the 16th domino falling? Being hit by the 15th. What's the ultimate cause? Me knocking over the first one. So there's ultimate causation, there's immediate causation. So we have an initiative, but ultimately it's all controlled by Allah. For wisdom, Allah knows best. And so it's not from us. And so we have to constantly remind ourselves, like, this isn't from me. And there's a beautiful hadith, and the hadith is fairly long, but at one part, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Tuba li'abdin akhidan bi'ina'i farasihi fi sabilillah. In kana fi as-saqati kana fi as-saqa. When kana fi al-hirasati kana fi al-hirasa." Like paradise is for the servant who seizes the reins of his steed and charges forth in the way of Allah. If he's in the front lines, he gives it its full right. So the valor is being established, and these people are lauded for heroes. And if he's in the rear guard, he's just mopping up, he gives it its full right. And so we shouldn't see being in public as one of the aphorism Ibn Ata'ala, he says, I lose my memory when it's past my bedtime. Man yuhibbu al-buhur huwa abdu al-buhur. One who loves to be seen is a slave of being seen. وكما قال من يحب الخفاء هو عبد الخفاء. One who wants to be obscure. I don't want to be in the front lines. I don't want to be khutbahs. He's a slave or she of obscurity. ومن استوى عنده حالان فهو عبد الله. And the one whom the two states are equal with him or her, that is the servant of Allah. And so, قم حيث أقامك الله. Be where Allah puts you. If Allah puts you out front and you're getting a lot of attention, then do that and give it its full right. Prepare your speeches. Do your research. Be careful to avoid things that are going to be excessively divisive. Give it its full right. And then if people are loving it, understand it's from Allah. And if you're just in the background somewhere, folding the chairs up after the conference, give it its full right. Understand that's what Allah decreed you to do. And they're both equal with you. So just kum haythu aqamak Allah. Be For Allah has placed you for the sake of Allah, and not for the sake of your nafs. And you'll never be disappointed. Person, you know, I could give a better khutbah than that. That's your nafs. Or, you know, subhanallah, brother is so humble. He could give a better khutbah than me, and look, he's folding the chairs. I wish I was folding the chairs. No, Allah made you the khatib, be the khatib. Allah put you in a situation to fold those chairs and do a good job. And no chair left behind. Barakallahu feekum. We could be all night. May Allah bless you guys, bless your patience. Who said anything, how you guys should with family. And so, as you said, I forgot the tea thing. It was like off the dome on the spot. Someone should have written it down to remind me. But if we upset each other, let's go drink some tea and get over it. And thank Allah, praise Allah. You guys go back to your schools, work hard, but take time to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we're not in this world first and foremost to go to school. That's secondary. We're in this world to worship Allah. And our binniyat, sarat al-adat, ibadat. With good intentions, ordinary acts become acts of worship. So make a niyyah that your study is to help you with your deen. Your study is to contribute to the uplift of both the ummah and humanity. Your studying is to help alleviate suffering. Rami, you still, you know, people, Leah, I want my studying, I want to be able to help alleviate some of that suffering out there. I want to be a psychiatrist who, like many of our brothers and sisters in the Khalil Center, are joining the traditional methodologies with contemporary therapeutic modalities to make a very solid, innovative psychiatric method rooted in our tradition, but benefiting from the tremendous insights of modern psychiatry to go heal some of those damaged Muslims. We have Muslims, kids who've grown up, and all they've known is violence and strife. In Gaza or Afghanistan or Somalia, you think there's no Muslim exceptionalism in that regard. We have Iman, therefore we don't have neurosis, psychosis, nervous breakdown, post-traumatic stress syndrome, because we're Muslims and we're strong. If you believe that, read the last chapter. How many of you are familiar with Frantz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth? Right? So a lot of people read that for the wrong reasons. Yeah, no. His theories have a lot of insight into national consciousness, etc. But the most insightful part of the book is the last chapter, which is what? Psychiatric disorders of colonial war. And he has all those case studies of these people who went mad, became suicidal because of this violence. Point is, the rest of the book is good too and insightful. But that actually, this last chapter is a scathing critique of his thesis. What's his thesis? Because you were like, rah. What's his thesis? His major thesis. Anyone? Frantz Fanon, Wretched of the Earth.
Black man liberates himself in and through violence.
Exactly. The violence of the anti-colonial struggle is catharsis. It's going to cleanse the colonial subject and make a new post-colonial man and woman. That's his thesis, right? At the end of the book, colonial violence made people crazy, made people neurotic, made people psychotic, made people have nervous breakdown, made people suicidal. What does that say about his thesis? You don't have to answer. But the point is, there's no Muslim. Algeria, this is Algeria. This is 100% Muslim, for all practical purposes, who this violence has affected like this. And this was what? This was 10 years. What about 30 years in Somalia? 30 years in Afghanistan. Between the Iran-Iraq war and the American occupation and invasion twice, like 30, 40 years in Iraq. 60 years in Palestine. What does this do to people? what can we do to help alleviate some of that damage? And people are strong, people are resilient, no doubt. And a lot of people, and for known, a lot of those case studies, you see incredible strength, especially some of the testimony of people under torture. So there's no doubt that Islam gave them a resiliency to be able to stand up to those hellacious conditions, but it takes a toll over time. And so we have an opportunity, some of us, to do something to address that. And so take advantage of those kinds of opportunities. Allah give you tawfiq and taysir and qabul. And may we all be able to come together and start working on that unity and working on those strategies. My vision is that the Muslims will be heirs as a community to Dr. King's mission. His mission against racism, militarism, and materialism. And the three are interconnected. And our religion gives us a strong position to oppose all three. And if we can do that successfully in our society, we'll make our contribution towards the whole. طيب السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.